Right now I'm working on my laptop and I'm going to show you how to install Windows 2016 Server or Windows Server 2016 in a VMware environment. So as you see on the taskbar, I have my VMware. So I use Vmware Workstation. Once it's started, that's what it looks like. So I have all my virtual machine. Right now I have 3 installed. I gave it a name, Server DC1, Server DM1, and Windows Server 2016. Actually, they're all the same machine. So what I did one installation, this one here, and then I went to VM, Manage, and I cloned it. Doesn't matter how you do it. If you're going to clone, you do have to change the IP address, the computer name, once it's all installed. Okay, so you can't, if you're going to clone also, your server has to be shut down. And then you can clone it and give it a name. These are VMware names that I gave to my virtual machine. So these are names. Server Domain Controller 1, Server Domain Member 1. You can call it whatever you want. It's just a name. At this point, in reality, those servers, I did not install Active Directory. So they're not domain. It is not a domain controller. It is in a work group, so it's just a member server. That's a member server. That's a member server in reality. These are just names. Eventually, it will become Domain Controller 1. Eventually, this will become a member of this domain. At this point, we haven't learned Active Directory. We don't know what is a domain. You should know it's a work group, but I will talk about it in class, what is a work group. Okay. Right now, they're all the same machine, except with a different computer name, a different IP address. That's not the computer name. That is a VMware name of the machine. So when you come here, not that, File, New Virtual Machine. For example, this VMware is to simulate hardware, software, hardware, computer hardware, and operating system that you can install on them. That's what that program does for a living. Not only that, it can also simulate networks. So for example, let's start with creating a network. So you would go to Edit, Virtual Network Editor. That's to create a network, a virtual network. So if I went there, and you will have to do that. At this point, I want you to create, by default, there's VNet 0 is created, VNet 1 is created. You will have to create VNet 8 and create it as a NAT, Network Address Translation. And that is my subnet for that network, 192.168.199.0. So now all my servers, I will connect them to this network, and they will get an IP address. So my subnet is 199. In my configuration file that where is it? Right here. My configuration file, well, that's my recipe. I was cooking today. Okay, so let's go back. I think it's a PDF somewhere. I opened it. What's this? Well, let's go and open it. Virtual machine. I'll come back to that. Lab configuration file. This I posted on Brightspace for you to see. You see this W? That W, where is it? Right there. Let's go back to Edit. I thought I had that open already, but it closed it. That's my 199 is my W. 192.168.199. So if I go back, where is, oh, right here. That's my W. 192.168.199. Create a virtual network with a virtual network editor. Call it VNet 8. Select NAT. And these my server DC1. VM, virtual machine name. It is not my computer name. That's a virtual machine name. That's what I was talking about. These are my names. These are my names that I created. Okay? So, that's my hardware simulation. I can go and make some settings. I can go and change my hardware. You see, add, I can add another network card. There's my network adapter. You notice I connected to VNet 8. That's the network I connected it on. Okay? And that's my network and my configuration file. 192.168.w. Now, if I look, which one are we looking at? I'm looking at the server DC1. So if I go over server DC1, I want the computer name to be server DC1 also. Administrator password, even I call it the same name, it does not have to be. Administrator password, memory, 1 core, 2 thread, hard disk 60. My IP configuration, I want it to be 192.168.w. In my case, W199. In your case, it will be something different. .11. The default gateway, I'll talk about that in VMware in a second. 199.2. My DNS. You'll learn that through the course. Later on during the course, we'll learn what DNS is, what it's for, and the reason we're putting it at that address. So we have 10 dot. And that's actually the DNS of Algonquin College for you to be able to surf the net through Algonquin College. That's the Google DNS. That also you can use to go through and surf the network, the internet. 127.001, that is your own machine DNS. At this point, it means nothing, because we did not install DNS on your machine, but eventually you will. So that address will be already in there, or you can put it at a later date. Here I tell you, in Chapter 4, you will be installing Active Directory. At that point, when we install Active Directory, it's only then that this machine will become an actual domain controller. Right now, it's just a work group. So you won't be doing this until you hit Chapter 4. Okay? So that's that. And now what? So now you know how to configure your adapter to connect to the network. If you don't, your network ain't going to work. Nothing's going to work for you. So we'll cancel that. So now you know these are virtual machines. For example, if you want to create a new virtual machine, it's very menu driven, so it's very straightforward. So I say typical recommended. You can use custom. Okay, just use the typical if you never did before. Install from a disk, install disk image. I will install the operating system later. You can create a physical machine, or you can create the physical machine and install. In my case, I did this here. There's my ISO. I tell her where's my ISO D. Boucher, Algonquin College, Software, Windows. So if I went there, if I went to my, so it's my lab D, Réal Boucher, Algonquin College. I'll close, minimize this. I'll go to software. Somewhere in there should have something called software. Not in there. It's in an Algonquin. Software. There it is. So let's minimize that. Software. And you see all my software. And there's my Windows Server 2016. And there's my file and my license in here. So when you go on the digital portal for you, not digital, the Algonquin College portal, you will get your software. You'll download it. It takes a little while. It's fairly big, and you will get the image, and that is the image that you see here, ISO. In there, you'll find your Windows Server 2016. I use the data center. So you can create a physical machine, a virtualizer for physical machine. I want you to create, a new virtual machine, which you go through typical, install it from there. Later on, next, product key. Okay, so I'll go back so I don't have to put the product key. You would do, and then it will ask you what type of virtual machine do you want to create. You want to create a virtual machine that, in my case, Windows version. So you have the different version of Windows. We want 16. Next. The name of the machine. Those are the names here. See, it says 2 because it's one already. So I could put here DM2 and then next. Then your hard drive, again, you can go store virtual in a single file or into multiple files. I always use single files, but it creates still multiple file, doesn't really matter. I'll cancel that at the end. And there's my machine. Then I say finish. I would have a physical machine. That's how simple it is. Then once you create the physical machine, then you could go to not the disk drive. I want to CD. Use physical diet, and then I can here put the ISO, and when I power up, it would power up this machine and it would start the installation. Then just follow your lab manual for the installation. But during the installation, after the installation is done, or during the installation, depending how you want to do it, use the advanced or not, I want you to use, not that, my configuration file to configure your machine. Simple as that. Then follow your lab. If you look at the lab, I have it open here. Lab 1, installing server. That again is on Brightspace. Read the manual. I suggest as you do your lab, because the manual is really well done. It has a description. It explains things, it describes things, and then you have a lab. Then it describes a little bit more, then you have a lab on what you just read. So this is really well done. Here I have some notes that I've put telling you, number 1, Microsoft has a virtual machine, a virtual program called Hyper-V. We do not use Hyper-V, we use VMware. Then I tell you some notes, VMware, we use Control-Alt-Insert, not Control-Alt-Delete. So in the manual, when it says Control-Alt-Delete, substitute delete for insert. That's Hyper-V. In the manual, activity 2426 or any activity that says Ethernet. In our case, because we're using VMware, it's called Ethernet 0. Activity 2-6, step 9, note you can enter more than one address. The address needs to be separated by comma. You'll see when you do that step what I mean. I think that's where you do your entry to configure the IP address for DNS. Now, the reason I put this is because you can do it. There's some labs that ask you to do it at the command prompt, and especially when you install a server core, which we haven't talked about, but eventually you'll install a server core. This is continue with my notes. If your VM is not booting from the ISO installation file, the CD, it could be because your VM BIOS is set to boot from the network. And that's what you would see unsuccessful. It's trying to boot from the network. So it ain't going to work. So what you have to do is find out your virtual machine, how to boot it up into the BIOS. That will depend on the physical host that you have. It follows your host. So if you have a Dell, you have an HP, some of you will be using a Mac, so you will have to find out what is the control key or which key you have to hit on power up to go into the BIOS, and then you make the changes. The example we have, I forget which machine we did that on. I forget because I have an HP laptop and I have a Dell. I forget which one I did it on. Then you go VMware SATA CD-ROM. See, I tell it to boot from the CD-ROM, not from the SCSI, not from the network, not from internal shell. Okay, boot it from VMware virtual machine. Okay, so read my notes because there's some errors in the books. And my notes would tell you, activity such, there's an error in the command, that should replace that with that. Or there's a note that hey, you're missing a folder, you have to create that folder, it's missing. Or it's looking for something in a user, and the user hasn't been created, you have to create the user. There are minor little mistakes in the books. Unfortunately, the book was written by a human, so there are some errors. Okay, so make sure you read the notes because you'll find errors. And if you do find errors in the book that are not in my notes, please let me know so I can update it. But I think we've found most of them. But if you do find some, okay, then you go to each activity in the book. Activity 2-3 in chapter 2. Activity 3, you take it, step 1, you take a screenshot of the server properties of the server you just install. So what I'm looking for, if you set up the proper computer name, system name, the IP address, and so on. Then you take a screenshot, activity 2, chapter 2, step 4. After you've done step 3, take a screenshot. Take a screenshot, and so on, and so on, and so on. And here you see, %9, screenshot of step 4, after you did this command. After you do an ipconfig/all, and take a screenshot. Any screenshot I cannot read, it does not exist. You get a 0. I have to be able to read it. So don't put 10 screenshots on one page. I won't be able to read it. I'm an old fart. I have glasses, and I still can't see. So make sure it's your responsibility to make sure I can read it. Okay, so, and I have an example. I don't know if I have them up. No, I have an example. On Brightspace, you'll see an example of screenshots that I want you to submit, and how to submit it. I'll talk about it in class. Okay, that's it for the installation of Windows 16, VMware. If I forgot anything, if you have any question, please let me know. I'll redo this video and make the correction or add what your suggestion if you have any. Now, where is that? So I will